Hello again, this is Frantz Kantor, artist, cartoonist, illustrator, teacher, trainer, Tinker Tailor Spy.
Say caricaturist.
Well, caricatures, I use caricatures, I do caricatures a lot, but...
Yeah, well this is what we're here for.
It's not an exclusive thing, and mostly an illustrator, but I have a very a different take on caricatures, caricature. So we're going to talk about that. Today's subject, actually, I should get rid of my face.
Hang on. Hello, Jim. How are you? I'm here with Jim Bridges.
Oh, look who just walked in. Oh. It's Jim Bridges, the president of the Australian Cartoon Museum.
Oh, what are you doing here? Oh, God, this looks good.
Fancy seeing you here today.
Yeah, what's a nice bloke like you doing in a place like this, and how many lies in the last sentence?
That's right.
Okay,
so I'm here with Jim Bridges, and
I'm the founder and president of the Australian Cartoon Museum here in downtown Docklands.
Docklands is the place of the land of docks.
Right.
So many docks in Docklands.
I'll dock your wages for that joke.
Yeah, so many docks. I'm going to be working on this fellow here today, and he's a fellow cartoonist from Melbourne. And he's very legendary, I would say.
He is.
Pretty legendary.
He's upset a lot of people.
Used to work for the Age.
He
now currently works for
the
Australian, which I used to work for.
If you only look at a little bit of the paper, you've got to keep on going to the business section, because that's where his cartoons are.
So this is him on BP Pick-a-Box, and this is some of his work. It's beautiful.
Now, take your hand away.
Laconic.
See, there's the microphone going to his backside.
Oh, about to hear a new proclamation.
Well, it's the Emperor's new clothes, you know.
Yeah. And this is our beautiful Julia, which she
handles that axe well, doesn't she?
She does. So an axe in one hand and a policy broom in the other.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, very nice watercolour. He does a lot of watercolour. This is, of course, H.P. Lovecraft. No,
actually, he's done a great job with this picture of
Hitchcock.
There's bird-like quality about him, isn't there?
It is, yeah, like a bird sitting on a big egg.
Yeah.
It's very, very nicely composed.
Like a shag on a rock.
Yeah. So he has a beautiful handle on composition. He has a fine artist mentality. So we'll talk more about that in a sec. Some of his cartoons, which are very, at once they're very informative of the issue. They're very biting and critical of a lot of politics and social comment. And then it has a lot of this humour with the expressions and things, because he's more than anything else, I think he's a humanist in that he understands the human condition and frailty. How would you get that? Look at this.
Oh, hang on, you've got to check that one out.
Yeah, we'll have a look at this. See that? Beautifully done, of the human body. That's a magnificent, even with the veins in the cheeks and the nose. And this is black and white, so this is the sort of level of scrutiny. He's like the Sherlock Holmes of illustration. And this is our ex-premier from
Victoria?
Melbourne, who, your ex-premier, not mine, but Jeff Kennett. It was beautifully handled, and what was it, How to Compete with New South Wales? It's sort of like a fashion show of the Opera House sales.
Well, these are heavy.
I will remove this for a sec, because Jim's holding these books, which
these are some of his books.
Have a look at. So some of his early work, caricatures, drawings, and prints.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the pill on Germaine's tongue.
Right.
This is a kid's book he illustrated with Rolf Hyman.
Yep. Beautiful.
A Spooner in the Works.
Mm-hmm. Just a pun on Spanner in the Works.
Yes, another Spooner in the Works.
There's another thing too.
Bodies and Souls.
We'll talk more about him.
He does but both these pictures are and that one too. These two are referencing.
That's a Goya.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and that's what's his name?
Yeah,
Dürer.
Yeah, Albrecht Dürer.
And that's Braque, isn't it?
Braque, yeah. So he does reference a lot of historical. He puts in a lot of historical references.
Yeah,
we're going to do Mark Knight one day.
He's the 5th of May.
Because Mark Knight's more like me. Mark Knight is another detective in cartoon and caricature, and I really like the idea of having these little what would you call them in videos or video games? You'd call them Easter eggs. So they're kind of like little clues to where the metaphor is coming from or where the message is coming from. So you tend to go down the road, and after seeing some of Spooner's work, he doesn't reference a lot of modern pop culture.
No, but even in
classical pop culture.
Yeah, but even in his caricatures, he'll have a little device in there that tells you a lot about the person's background.
Yeah,
it could be barbed wire over the Pope's medallion or something. Yeah. That's a book he did on climate change, and that's Van Gogh. That's the send up for Van Gogh.
The seed sowers.
And that's his last book, which is about the first 20 years of this century, and it's a fabulous book, full of these beautiful cartoons, but. Yeah, it's his writing. It's his writing that I would really.
Yeah, so he's actually. I mean, we've all joined the AJA in our careers, the Australian Journalists Association.
Oh, have we?
But he's haven't you? You
no.
Didn't? Okay.
No.
Well,
although I've written
illustrators,
stuff for them, I've written stuff for them. They've actually asked me to write stuff for them.
Well, cartoonists and illustrators have had to join the AJA in various times in their career. But he's actually. Won a journalist award.
Well, we'll talk about that later, but look, I hope you don't draw him like he's Paul Keating, because he's going to get upset.
What do you mean, Paul Keating?
Well,
left-leaning.
Well, no, it looks a bit like Paul Keating already, and he's not a fan of Paul Keating.
I'm actually thinking more like Basil Rathbone here. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some...
well, he was a good sword fighter. He was a sleuth, yeah.
Well, it's more like a Sherlock Holmes.
He was.
So let's get started in this. We're going to... If I can grab that piece of paper again, which you surreptitiously...
go back attached to a book. Oh, surreptitiously. Okay.
So the idea is, this is a thumbnail, right? So I'm just basically working out shapes. And one of the shapes that I've worked out is this, which is kind of a weird sort of, I don't know how you describe that.
Well, it's the loomis, isn't it? It's the thing coming down from the circle.
Well, loomis is a construction method of designing, three-dimensional.
And then you have the bit coming down where the jaw is.
Yeah, you drop. Basically, the ball represents the cranium of the skull, which is this.
Oh, hello.
And the features are attached to the ball, right? So the sphere is the most important aspect. And you can very quickly...
Excuse me, is that a peace sign? Is that a peace sign?
Possibly. You can very quickly get a sense of correct proportion and balance in the head itself when you think of this construction method. So what I've got here is a very rough thumbnail of this shape. And looking at the photograph, we've got a light source which is coming in from the right, so it's going to create a sense of shadows on the left-hand side of the face. There's also another light that's coming in. I actually lit this myself. And there's a fill light which is coming in on the left, which is breaking up the shadows a little bit. So you've got a three-dimensional proposition for the forms, for the for the creation of a three-dimensional head, a study. I love all of these, large shapes and fluid shapes of the hair. He's got very beautiful hair, which we're going to use the pencil to examine.
Here today and gone tomorrow.
Yep. So let's press on with all possible dispatch.
So we're going to mention John Spooner and dispatches, are we?
Okay, so where will we start? We'll probably start... let's start over here. So he's got a fantastic nose. This bone is the launch of many ships. And, the shapes, the variety of shapes that come off this bone is absolutely amazing. It's magical. So you get big noses and short noses and round noses and broken noses and all kinds of different effects. And in and of itself, it's the centre of the face, but it doesn't really get affected by time so much as the rest of the face.
Oh, the ears.
It is affected by
the
gravity.
Ears get bigger. The ears get bigger.
Well, yeah, they say that, but ears and noses are just features that aren't really moving of themselves so much unless you physically touch
but of all
them.
the body as you age, if you live a long life, the ears and the nose do change.
Yeah, if you spent your whole life with your finger in your nose, then it would change the shape of your nose, right? Because over time, that's what would happen.
Yeah. Reminds me of a song my father used to sing.
You know, this whole concept of lines, faces
I've got
changing.
no strills to hold me down.
No squills.
Nostrils.
Nostrils.
That's right. He
Nostrils.
changed the words.
Did he? Why would he do that?
Oh, because he was my dad.
And that was his dad joke.
Yeah, you ask him questions, you never get a straight answer, you know. What's that, Dad? Oh, that's a wing-wong for a goose's bridle, all that sort of stuff, you know.
Right.
Mm.
Did they come from any particular reference, or did he just make them up
No,
on the
there's no
spur of
such
the
thing
moment?
as a wing-wong.
A wing-wong.
And gooses don't have bridles.
Well, Mother Goose, I think. They had them in...
No, she wore a hat.
Didn't they have them in
she
Nursery Rhymes?
No, but not... oh, God, here we go. No, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Of what? Mother Goose?
Of Arthur Mee, children's encyclopedias, just illustrations of kids' fairy tales.
We're going to do... I noticed on the table over there, you've got the Look and Learns. Is
Yeah,
that
well, I
for
grew up with Look and Learns.
A book bite of...
Yeah,
Look
we'll have
and
to do
Learns.
one, yeah. You know, I get back to John. John's a political cartoonist. He went to Monash University, I think.
Yep.
And he was studying law because he wanted to be a lawyer.
Yep.
And he illustrated cartoonies and things for the Lot's Wife, which was the newspaper at all universities have a newspaper.
Yep.
And actually, he was telling me this recently. He used to draw in biro, and of course, especially blue biro doesn't come up very well.
No, it tends to break up.
That's right. So I always accuse him of being influenced by Ruelt, the artist who did thick lines on the outside of his people. But he said, no, it was some guy from, I think, Brazil or some South American country, political cartoonist who had a thick line. Anyway, John doesn't like any of that work, his early work at all, and he refuses point blank to let me reproduce it. I've got a story about it. I actually went to an Australian Cartoon Association meeting where I gave a talk on, I think I gave a talk on John.
Yeah.
And I had 2 fat files of his clippings of all his early work, and they disappeared.
He wouldn't let you show them?
No, they disappeared. I don't know if he was there that night, I can't remember. But they disappeared. And I've never found them since, so someone's knocked them off. And of course, when I told John, he was really happy. And I was deeply shocked because I try and keep an archive so the whole of their career is on file, you know. So I had to start again. Anyway, as you were saying before, John always, he is a fine artist. He does lots of etchings and paintings, oils and things. And his wife's an artist too. But John's a really serious guy. He does. For instance, he did a drawing of I think it was an etching. It was a very good drawing anyway of Homer Simpson, but he's dressed as a self-portrait by Rembrandt.
Wow.
You know.
I haven't seen this.
Yes. And of course he's probably the best artist in Australia for the last, like fine artist as a cartoonist working, and everybody holds him in great awe. Oh, that's not supposed to happen.
Sorry.
Ooh.
I thought for a moment it might be you.
It could be you.
It could be you,
says Tommy Hanlon.
Junior.
Anyway, so John references a lot of fine art, and he is a fine artist, and actually he really got into etching. And he loves Wilson's Promontory, which is a place in Victoria which is very primal. Lots of wind down there, big beaches.
Windswept and interesting.
Very, very windswept. I mean, it's a dandruff-free zone down there. It's that windy, you know. And he did these etchings, and you could almost feel the wind in the etchings, which is pretty hard to do, I suspect, technically. But he did it. Yeah. Anyway, he worked for The Age for many years. He got he went off and became a solicitor. Yeah. And I think he was still illustrating bits and pieces here and there. And with his law background, that sort of helped his forensic sniffing around subjects. Well,
he has strong opinions.
Yes, very strong opinions, but he's
not afraid to tell you. So he's not the sort of person that you can just sort of make an idle comment and then let it slip.
No, you're in for it then.
Because it's
he'll either tell you off or he'll tell you why you're wrong. Anyway, the point is he's a real political animal. He's our version of David Lowe, who was a total political animal, cartoonist to New Zealand, then he came to Australia, then he went to Britain. And Lowe was on to Hitler, 12 years before the war started.
Yeah.
You know, watch this guy, you know. Anyway, John's a total political animal, and his two main big interests are economics and manufacturing. The fact that Australia's lost its manufacturing base, that's always been a bugbear with him for many years. And he produced a book with Mark Knight about what happened to the Australian car industry, which was a little book that came out by Scribe Publications. And it's a great little book. It didn't particularly go anywhere, but it's a really great document, I thought. Both their cartoons are wonderful in it, you know, all the use of their cartoons. Anyway, as you were referring to before in the beginning, in the preamble, we had such a thing to the show, he won Journalist of the Year, which set the cat among the pigeons. A lot of people were really peeved off about that because he's a cartoonist.
Yeah, I think that cartoonists they're of course referring to cartoonists as illustrators, sort of illustrating what they're told by the editor,
but John,
rather than having an opinion. But
John's an investigative journalist. He actually does a lot of background interviewing and all that sort of stuff before he comes up to his ideas. You know, and he rings up people and all that sort of stuff all over the world to get the facts. And he's a very serious guy in lots of ways, as you can tell from the picture. But
it's very dour,
he also plays cricket, so he couldn't be that bad. And he's in his 70s and he's still playing cricket. Yeah, and of course he's got to be careful because, you know, the artist needs their fingers for some reason, and of course when you play cricket sometimes you can break fingers, you know, when when you're catching the ball. So John's he's an interesting character. He really is, and if you want to find out about a subject that you don't know much about, and he does, he'll tell you, and he'll inform you, and he'll tell you about all these sources and where he gets it from. And he's got the sense of history, which is one of the reasons I like him. He's got the sense of history that everything's connected to the history, and you know.
Well, he refers to that a lot, you know, in his work. This is the mark of well, it's an investigative journalist, but as an illustrator, it's sort of mixing, you know, metaphors and things that impact and tell a bigger story, a deeper story than the cartoon would normally. So it's the ability to use these historical references and metaphors and things, and it's kind of it's a fun aspect for an artist as well. Like you're actually drawing something that you want to study as a painting, like a Degas or a Picasso or something, and it's kind of cathartic in a way to do that. I did one of Picasso and Picasso's La Guernica, and up until then I'd never really had a close look at La Guernica, so it was like a way of investigating it almost stroke by stroke. So it was kind of fun to do that. I like that. I'm sure he would find the
John's
process
done that too.
very much.
John did the divorce process and the divorce court.
Yeah,
using Guernica as a template, and it was in full colour and was right across the one side of the Saturday Age to the other side.
If you haven't seen La Guernica, you must Google La Guernica. The Guernica.
It's not Le, is it?
I think it is, but Guernica. It's a very powerful painting.
Well, it's about the Spanish Civil War and how the Germans actually gave for the Spanish planes to test out their planes, and they dropped them on civilians.
Yes.
Yeah. During the Spanish Civil War.
It's got a very
and it has the painting has a reputation of being the greatest painting of the last century.
Yes. So we were having a conversation. I was having a conversation recently with my students. So to that very fact that if you were about to leave planet Earth on a sort of a Noah's Ark, what painting, if you had time to save one painting in the world, what would you say?
It's a big painting. It's about...
Well, it's a big ship.
It's 15 feet long, I think.
Yeah, well, it's a big ship.
Oh, it's a big ship. Oh, that's all right. Yeah.
So, yeah, like Guernica, I think, is probably, in many ways, the most important painting in history.
So you're saying that, or your student was saying that?
No, I was saying that.
Okay.
Because there's a lot going on in it. There's a lot of... it's very emotional and very powerful document. It's a historical document. There's a lot of things going on. And also the way it's treated, the power of Picasso's investigation into African art and abstraction and distortion, cubism, etc. Everything is evident in that painting, and of course that affects modern art. It affects a lot of artists' thinking, and pushing the envelope further and further, especially in the world of animation, comics, and certainly.
Well, I've asked John about his early interest in cartoons and comics, and he wasn't that really interested in them at all. He got into the job of cartooning just because he was at university and someone asked him to draw, and he could, So I mean, he didn't grow up influenced with cartoons as most cartoonists are,
Yeah.
I don't think he read any comics. I think he just read books and stuff, like the usual stuff that people read in the 50s and late 40s, British stuff, British boys' annuals and stuff like that, I suppose. That's what he was reading.
But he was able to tackle, the grueling workload of a daily cartoon.
Oh, yeah, but he's also... You know how Brad Holland has this really gravitas style, the American?
Yeah.
Well, John's like our version. He really takes, there's he did a caricature of, who was it? One of the South American, I forget his name, like dictators. And behind him, he's got black backgrounds like you do. But he's got body bags hanging up, and they're misshapen, so they've been bashed around, and so they don't resemble people anymore, and they've got blood soaked and all that sort of stuff. He really can get very heavy. He can. There's an incredible gravitas, especially about his black and white work. I actually miss. You see, the newspapers want everybody to do colour, and I miss his black and white stuff because he did some incredible heavy stuff. Yeah.
Well, maybe they don't want heavy news.
No, they don't. They want entertainment, I suppose, like infotainment. You know, that's the thing. Anyway, John, like this is interesting because he sort of doesn't have that anymore. He's sort of got very short hair.
Yeah.
And
we'll give him a haircut.
well, that type of hair reminds me of when he was drawing.
I just love the wispy flavour.
Yeah.
I mean, on that day it was quite windy, and you know he was all windswept and interesting.
Well, when just trying to think, when Jeff Kennett was the Premier of Victoria, John went after him. He really went after him, and especially drew his haircut always up like this, and he turned it into iron bars and crowbars and hammers and all sorts of stuff. In that one you saw, he turned it into the Sydney Opera House. And now Jeff Kennett is almost unrecognisable because he has such short hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he really went after him. He went after him like Scarf went after Nixon. You know, that sort of scale. And he's
I guess once you start, you can't let go.
Well, I mean, he.
That's the bone. You're the
he
dog.
works for a newspaper, and so he goes and talks to he hangs out with all the writers. So he's one of them. And he wants to be updated all the time. He's a political animal. He's just soaked in the stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And he's got a high sense of justice.
Absolutely, yeah. So he had a spat with Lunig, I hear.
Well, he was bullied. He was bullied at school. He was bullied at school, and he sort of. I think that made a big, like he's been fighting back ever since.
Fighting injustice, yeah.
Yeah, and the bigger the bully,
Yeah. Well, I was bullied at school. I had to turn to bigger people like Captain American.
I was told not to bring
Spider-Man.
that subject up anymore.
Why?
Because I'm always trying to get you to talk about it, and you always say I don't want to talk about it.
Well, it's a deep pond here. We're trying to.
We do have children watching this show.
Well, don't take any crap from bullies. Remember, it doesn't reflect on you. It's their own shortcomings. It's not about you.
Yeah. So John goes after them all, the big ones. The prime ministers, the CEOs, the corporations.
Good on him.
The bigger the better.
Yeah.
And it sort of got him into a lot of trouble indirectly because, they all know he's a terrier. He doesn't let go. But, for instance, they get him to illustrate someone's article.
Yeah.
And on the op-ed page, and the person might be writing they might be writing an article where they say that Jeff Kennett's selling off the gas and all these things is a good thing. But John doesn't believe that, so he does a cartoon of the opposite. He doesn't follow what the article says. He does what he does, what he thinks. And of course, Australians being lazy, they just look at the cartoon.
Yep.
And they think that the author has written an cartoon, a story that John's illustrated. But John he goes his own way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this happens a few times, and the author gets really cheesed off because people come up and say, how come you changed the horses? And of course, and so after a while they say they're not going to write for the Age anymore because so it causes all this friction,
Yeah.
But that's because they don't do their homework. They don't read the whole article.
Yeah. Well, human nature.
Yeah, human nature, that's right.
Not everyone likes reading as much as I do. I'm a voracious reader.
Yes, you and Popeye.
I love reading. Hate reading, writing.
That's right, yeah. So...
Do you even know where that's from? I know where it's from. It's from do you know where it's from?
Yeah, Popeye.
What?
Which one?
Which one?
Are you talking about a film or are you talking about
it's from a film.
You're talking about the movie or are you talking about the cartoons?
It's a feature. It's a short, but it's about 20 minutes long.
Oh, is it? Hang on. Is it Alibaba?
Yes.
Ooh. Actually, there's a better joke. There's a better joke. He goes up to the. He goes up to where all the treasure is.
Ali Hassan.
And he says...
Ali hasn't got it anymore.
He says, open sesame.
Yeah.
And the door says, says who? And he says, says me.
Yeah.
And it opens up. I thought that's a great joke.
It is. It is a great joke.
Well, this is a historically incorrect portrait because he hasn't got it anymore up there anyway. But it's all right. You were wrapped in the windswept...
yeah, I like how his hair was kind of like cocky.
This comes under artistic license, does it?
Yeah.
Well, you're not much of a barber.
No.
Anyway, so there's John.
Not yet.
No, his hair.
His hair. It's John's hair.
Yeah, he might...
Farewell hair.
Yeah, hair today and gone tomorrow. I know the feeling.
So, let's talk about his politics.
Well, that's...
Is that dangerous?
It is dangerous. John, you can't second-guess John. It doesn't matter what the issue is. He thinks about it individually. He just doesn't... he's not a them or us. He's not a black or a white.
Yeah.
He looks at every issue totally...
separately and individually.
That's right. And, of course...
Yeah, so he's not really a left-leaning, right-leaning, or any kind of leaning. He's an individual.
Well, yes.
He does classify
I think he's personally, I think he's a very conservative man.
Yeah.
But most people are as they get to his age. But it's just that you lose... Well, they do. A lot of people become conservative. A lot of radicals, when they're young, become dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. It's a known
Why?
fact.
Because they're not afraid to get punched in the face when you're older.
I don't know. I've met a lot of people who I used to hang out with at university who were really radicals, and then you find out they're virtually fascists when they get to about 50.
Really?
Yeah, that's my experience.
Oh.
Anyway, John's very much an individual, and you'd lose. Yeah. You wouldn't bet on his politics. You'd lose money. Because he does it all the time.
And did you want to speak about the incident with Lunig, or
no? That's
something else. They had a
well, no, they're talking now. They're talking now. They had a very close relationship.
Yeah,
but they're talking now, as men do.
Do men?
Well, a lot of people have falling outs with in families, and they fight over politics and religion and all sorts of stuff, don't they?
Absolutely. I know more than.
But
than others.
John really admires Lunig, and I know Lunig admires John. So and they've known each other, and they've met hundreds of hours of probably conversation and argument. But you see, the thing about Lunig, for instance, there's a lot of people who really think he's wishy-washy and mamby-pamby, and he does all these sort of. They do. They think he sort of he tiptoes through the
tulips.
The tulips too much. But as John says, during the Falklands War, during the Russian Olympics, during all sorts of things, Lunig will do a cartoon that blows everybody away, goes right to the source of what it's all about.
Of humanity.
No,
the human
about
condition.
the issue of what's actually happening. Because a lot of people
in human
a lot of people
terms,
bite bits off the sides of the issues.
Yeah.
But
They're complicated?
Well, Lunig he just comes up with the toughest metaphor of all. You know what I mean? And it just bang! It's all there. It's all there in the one cartoon.
Yeah.
And John's forever telling people when people criticise Lunig. But you see, Lunig is very much a poet, and there's not too many places for poets in this country. So he's got a job at the newspaper. Although he started off, his early cartoons were quite vicious. Yeah. When he worked for Nation Review and stuff, the early stuff. But Lunig's a very complicated person. And so is John, but John's, he plays cricket, so you've got to watch him, There's something wrong with the bloke. His age still playing cricket. I know he loves it and all that sort of stuff, but, cricket? God.
Well,
I see
it's
him
easier than baseball. Baseball, there's a lot of bloody running in baseball. There's not much running in cricket, unless you're the batsman.
But you have to be the batsman. What are you talking about? You don't know the rules.
I do know the rules. I've played cricket.
Have you?
Yeah. I've been an outfielder. I've never run...
An outfielder?
Or what do you call it? On the outside?
Outlander?
Outlander. Waiting out by the trees.
I mean, I see John as a chess champion, not as a cricketer, but that's another story. Yeah, and it's great when you're with him. He talks about the light all the time, and he loves the light. About 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yes,
loves that light, and I've been with him where he just stops the car and gets out and stands there looking at the light, and I feel like I'm in the...
You're with an impressionist.
Who was that British artist who used to stick his head out of trains in the rain, all that stuff? What's his name? He did all those...
Sickert?
Turner. Yeah, I feel like I'm with Turner when he does stuff like that. And he loves clouds too. Look at that cloud. Oh, stop the car. Oh, have a look at that. Oh,
Yeah.
And he uses watercolours in his cartoons now because the newspapers want colour. And he does a lot of beautiful washes,
Yeah.
And he doesn't use many colours. He doesn't use many colours. He was actually in The Age, which was a great, many years ago, it was regarded as one of the 5th greatest newspapers in the whole world. They had an incredible lineup of cartoonists. And Les Tanner was like the oldest bloke there.
Yeah.
And he was the father figure. And it's funny because all the people all over Australia, all the cartoonists all over Australia, when a new bloke came on the scene, a new politician got elected, they all waited to see what Les Tanner would draw of him before they'd move on, because he'd always had a wonderful way of grabbing them, with his shorthand. Anyway, he's also a real character, and he was a father figure to John, and John was once told by him that I think the story goes that Les Tanner sent John a postcard, and it's a self-portrait of Paul Cézanne, and of course there's only about 2 colours in it.
Yeah.
And he wrote on the back, you only need a few colours, don't get carried away with, the colour spectrum. So,
who wrote that, Cézanne or Les Tanner?
Tanner to John.
Right.
So, and of course they obviously had many conversations. And of course in those days they used to promote...
I wish someone had sent me in the early days a postcard like that, because colour theory is quite an advanced topic.
Yeah.
And, if you don't have the right sort of approach to it, it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, well, so John uses a lot of blues and yellows in his work. A bit of green, but that's basically it. But they're beautiful. They're just especially when they're backlit on your computer.
Yes.
They're like they're like
what?
Stained glass windows with a lovely effect.
Right. Ah.
That's what I've got. And he has a lot of white in his pictures too.
Yeah.
So that's obviously
right.
he's listened to that advice and followed that
Yes.
through the years.
Yep.
But I miss his black and white stuff personally. He did really, really deep, profound, shocking pictures that really got to the nub of the issues. You know, like for instance, one of my favourite drawings. Actually, it's in the museum. It's stuck on a board. It's about sex abuse in the churches, and he's got an old-fashioned wardrobe, which has a crucifix on top, and it's shut, and the bishop's crook goes between the doors, the handles,
Right.
and on the floor are an adult's pair of shoes and a kid's pair of shoes, and
Wow.
just at the side you can see a shadow of the bishop. You're not quite sure if it's a bishop's shadow or what, just walking away from the thing, and it just says it all. It's just really, and it's all dark with dark wash, you know.
Yeah.
And I think David Rowe's pictures lately, he's got this apocalyptic view. In the Financial Review, I think he was influenced by all the washes that John used to do. But I as I said, I'm not much of a colourist.
Colorist.
No, I'm not that interested in colour as much. I think.
Is it something to do with being having a bias, a colour blind?
No, it's not. It's just that I love like you get a cartoonist.
Contrast.
You get I love contrast, and you get a cartoonist like David Lowe, and David Lowe was a great draftsman.
Yeah.
But when he really when he was very serious about an issue, he'd put a lot of black in the picture, and it just added weight. It adds weight to the story, you know.
Gravitas, as you
Yes,
said.
it's dramatic. It's dramatic. And John would do stuff of like he's got another picture of Agent Yellow. Is that the stuff? Yeah, Agent Yellow, the stuff that they dropped on the
Agent Orange.
Yeah, Agent Orange. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That they dropped on the foliage in
Vietnam.
And he's got all these bits of bodies all falling from the sky, legs and torsos and stuff, all just crashing to the ground, and army medicos carrying off bits and pieces, you know.
Yeah.
He just had, and just sort of really powerful. It's all done in wash, dark wash, you know.
Yeah.
And you pick up the paper and bang, wow, you know.
Yeah.
And in a way, his opinions became too hot for the editors of the age, and they were forever sort of trying to tone him down.
Well, it's more like
they moved him over to the.
He's more like the New Yorker artist rather than or some bigger paper. I mean, he added to the gravitas. There's that word again of the age.
Yes,
his work.
undoubtedly.
You know, and they probably didn't like that. They wanted to be more of a magazine.
So they moved him occasionally over to the business to.
Yeah.
And now that's what he does in the Australian. He does the business. He does illustrations in the business section. But occasionally they give him the main political place when someone goes on holidays or. Yeah,
sure.
I think he gets once a week.
Yeah.
When Johannes Leek, Bill's son, he does the Political Cartoonists. So whether you're talking about the Palestine Jewish situation, or you're talking about cricket,
you avoid those topics.
Or you're talking about cricket, John's talking about it the exact same way.
You avoid those subjects.
No, but John's talking about cricket and the PLO and
with the same passion.
That's right, totally passionate.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good on him.
Yeah, and he's an old bugger now. I mean, he's still got that fire in his belly, and I'm impressed, you know.
All artists should have fire.
They should, yeah. They should have the fire in their belly.
Yeah.
Well, it's a combination of keeping the child alive in you or keeping the fire in the belly. I think that's They're the two
well,
main...
yeah, but I mean, it's, remaining young, the childish aspect.
Forever young.
Enjoying your work, having fun with what you do. I love these deep lines here. Some people think these are created by the sun, but they're created by expressions that last longer than squinting from sunlight.
Okay, so...
It's a very powerful conflicts and issues going on here.
There's
a battle happening in his face.
You're the caricaturist psychologist, aren't you? So do you want to read these lines on his face?
Okay, so...
What are these all about?
There's an intensity of thought. There's a single overriding purpose, which means that the forehead is sort of driven down to the evidence gatherers, which is the areas of sense. The ears, the eyes, and the nose, and the mouth. They gather the information for the brain. Touching the world, the senses. You got 5 senses: touch with your fingers, eyes, ears, nose, and mouth.
And common.
What's common?
Common sense.
Yeah.
Although that's
dollars and cents.
That's not used anymore, apparently.
Well, has it ever been used?
Oh yeah. The 50s was full of it.
Common sense. Why am I using a harder pencil? Let's go with a softer one. That's a very soft pencil. It's an Albrecht.
I wouldn't go soft on John. I wouldn't go soft on him. Go hard.
Well, we need to build a dialogue. We need to build a conflict of soft and hard.
Okay.
Soft versus hard. Left versus right. Up versus down.
So what are all these about?
These are lines that are gathered from observation of the world, and it's created by looking deeply into things, and and it affects how your worldview is built. So there's a lot of study and thought about the environment, about the world around the artist, the subject, and a lot of it is critical of because the lines are not in concert; they don't go in one way. They tend to cross and converge. Some of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a line here. Actually, I've got rid of it, but there is subtle lines that cross and converge around the eyes. So that tend to sort of give you an impression of, a lot of the conflicts that a lot of the things that the eyes pick up or detect affect the brain, and a lot of the stuff is not pleasant. So,
well, that'd be right, because
and that's not necessarily an environmental observation. Eyes, we reread books, right? If you constantly read books and you're affected by them, right? They show up in your imagination and in your expressions.
Yeah, the word critical.
Yeah,
that sums John up.
Well, critical
is critical.
Not just being against something; it's actually examining it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And as I said...
so there's a lot of contrasts.
When there's something comes up, a new issue comes up, and he doesn't know anything about it, he'll spend a lot of time dredging up all the facts he can find on both sides or 3 sides or 4 sides of the situation before he actually comes up with his opinion. So that's why I'm saying you can't bet on him. You can't... when something happens... he's
a sleuth. He's like Sherlock Holmes.
Back to Basil Rathbone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when I saw this nose, I thought, yes, there's a strong Basil Rathbone element here.
So you start from the nose, do you?
Not necessarily. You start where you start. I think I started here, but in the centre. So there's a lot of this concentration going on. So how long have you known him? I like his hands. I like his hands. A pity I can't draw his hands. I like his hands. Yeah, he does express himself quite well. Yeah. But you'd expect that from a legal background, wouldn't you?
Yeah, he's definitely got a legal background. Yeah, definitely. I always had problems with him for years because I always felt he was more of an illustrator than a caricaturist. And in even his best caricatures, there was a strong sense of illustration in him. But that's the man who wants to tell the story. That's the man who wants to.
How would you describe that as a difference between what's the difference between caricature and illustration from that perspective? Why is a caricature more of an illustration and less of a caricature?
Well, since I've met you, you've made it clear to me that there's part of what I sort of sensed intuitively, but I never really understood it, and it's just about the storytelling ability of illustration.
Yeah.
And John wants to get to the truth all the time, so I would look at his pictures and I just felt that they weren't complete caricatures. They were sort of illustrations, and they used to frustrate me because...
In what way? They told more of a story?
Well, they look more like a portrait than a caricature. There was this. It was on the edge. It was always on the edge, you know.
So you're talking about the resemblance pushed somehow to extremes.
No, he was really good with he was spot on with the
likeness.
The likeness, but there was just this strong sense of illustration kept pushing into the work, you know. And of course, because I love. Oh, that's soft.
Yeah.
Because I loved caricature so much, I was sort of, I was biased towards caricatures, and it took me quite a long time to really appreciate his work. It just did. I'm very impressed with his technical prowess, but and then one day I remember I opened up the Saturday Age and there was a huge portrait of Whitlam. And we've discussed this in a film we made about caricature. And it was the best, it was the most mysterious picture I'd ever seen of Whitlam. And I still, to this day, don't really fully understand it. Because he's got Whitlam with an expression on his face where he's lost. He's lost. And of course, Whitlam always wasn't lost for anything, words or anything. He was always pushing ahead like this bulldozer of history, knows where he's going.
Bulldozer of Whitlam.
Well, of Whitlam, yeah. But Whitlam's the bulldozer going ahead. He knows where he's going. He's got his vision.
Very sure of himself. Very powerful.
And this big picture of Whitlam, he looked all at sea. He looked all at sea in his eyes.
Right.
And it really... I went out and I bought about 10 copies of the Saturday Age. I cut all these portraits up and I put them all over the place, thinking of if I put one in the kitchen and one in here and I'll walk in and I'll just actually see it and instantly understand what the picture's all about. And to this day I still don't really... I mean, I can understand what he's doing technically, etc., but it's still got this... He's got this mysterious quality
enigma.
Which I love. Yes, I love that picture.
Yeah.
And on my Facebook page... The what do you call it? The little picture you have, the thumbnail.
Icon,
The thumbnail of me is holding up that picture underneath my chin.
Right.
I mean, I like Whitlam, but this picture's more than just a liking of Whitlam. It's a And I'm attracted to the mysterious in art, and I think that's I mean, he's telling a story, he's telling you what he thinks of Whitlam, but at the same time he's putting something else in there as well. And John will admit this as well. He doesn't really fully understand what he's doing, although, part of him does, but he's got
sometimes you feel...
Yeah, he's got that open, he's got that...
You have a sense.
Yes. And you see, I'm very different. I don't think things through, I'm very intuitive.
Yeah.
I just sort of... sense things. I don't. I mean, I'm not a chess player.
I'm not a Basil Rathbone in solving cases. It's not all logic. Some of it is intuitive.
Yeah, but you can hear the brain ticking away. You can hear the clockwork going around really fast in his brain.
Yeah, you can hear the clockwork going fast in Spooner's brain.
You can too. Yeah, that's it. But you can't hear it in mine. I tell you, it's I'm very intuitive. That's why I understand things. That's why I love cartoons, because cartoons make me understand politics. Nothing else it does.
And do you need to understand politics?
Oh, well, when you have 3.5 million cartoons, you have to. It's part of the deal. I mean, I love images and how they tell stories.
Isn't it politics is like team barracking, like, left and right? Like
yeah, but it's more than that. There are bigger issues.
Hawk and dove.
Well, but it's.
They're all just sort of team.
It's not just about It's not just about Essendon versus Collingwood. It's about the clubs. It's about the people who run the clubs. It's about where they get their money from. It's about all this stuff. Everything. It's about the future. It's about and it's about politics. Like I remember giving a class to students who weren't they were art students, and they weren't at all interested in politics. They were not interested in politics, and the teachers, that's why they got me in.
To make them interested in politics?
Yeah, so I had all these famous cartoons, including Guernica, by artists.
Like Guernica, yeah.
Yeah, Guernica, and Dormiers and all this sort of stuff. Plus I went into the modern...
Did they find that interesting?
I went to them, yeah, they did. And they actually took over the class trying to guess who the pictures were by. But all I did, I wrote 1 plus 1 on the board equals, and they're all groaning, boring, And instead of writing 2, I wrote politics.
Uh-huh.
And then I wrote 2 plus 2 equals more politics. So politics is the space between two people to a certain extent, and their opinions.
Yeah.
That's how I look at politics. And that's how I explained it to the kids, and they liked it. And then I realised that so much art is political, because they had this this view that art's not political at all, that politics is boring, they don't want to do it.
Well, with art, politics tends to be a bigger issue. It's sort of a wider context. There's a lot of, like Spooner, thinking about politics, looking at Spooner's work. You're aware of its historical significance.
Yeah.
Because of the references.
That's what I love about his stuff. He's always dragging in history. He's always dragging in...
Yeah, but someone like me who doesn't quite understand the politic, having that historical reference it's like an Easter egg in a game. So it's a reward for further study.
Yeah.
So you look deeper into the issue with the invitation that the cartoonist has given you.
Well, a lot of people find John's cartoons hard to... they want a 2-second...
Or maybe they don't like
They want
history.
a 2-second grab. They're used to the 2-second grab. Oh, there's the gag, move on.
Exactly, I don't like that.
John's not interested. He wants people to think. He wants people to think. How do you... When you think of all the things that feed into an issue, how do you put all them into a cartoon? So his metaphors are multi-faceted.
Yeah.
There's not just one gag in his jokes. Even his caricatures, as I was saying before, he will have something in it. Like he's got a caricature of the Pope.
Yeah.
And down the bottom, right down the bottom, there's a piece of barbed wire going across.
Yeah.
And he's a Polish Pope. So he's referring to...
Second World War? Or?
Yeah, and he's also referring to Russia and Poland.
Solidarność?
Yes, all that stuff. He hints,
Yeah, but he'll hint at it with a metaphor, with a visual metaphor, rather than, writing on things of what things
Well,
meant
he
to
uses
be.
writing a lot in his cartoons.
You have to do that with politics, that's true.
But he doesn't have newspapers floating down the street with
with the article on it.
Yeah, he doesn't have stuff like that. He will label things, but it's funny because one of the great cartoonists of all time was James Gilray, and British, and he really brought cartooning. I mean, the type of cartooning he did, we still do today.
Yep.
And I can see John's really part of that tradition. He's really part of that tradition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better. So there's a strong historical significance to cartoons. And really, that's the importance of people like John Spooner, because it reminds us that there is a bigger picture, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that old saying of those who, you know, ignore history are condemned to repeat it. That's the whole thing with...
John's really interested in besides that, he's also very interested in the history of economics. And that's something that we really fall down on, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, there was the crash in the 30s and all that sort of stuff. But
but what does that actually mean?
But that's right. You've got to follow not just history, you've got to follow the economic history as well.
Yeah.
And so he's multidisciplinary in his thinking, you know.
Yes.
And he leaves me for dead because, as I said, I'm intuitive, and I sort of understand things intuitively.
Right. Okay. He's a very interesting character.
Very. And look, you don't win. You know, I don't think anywhere else in the world a cartoonist has won a journalist award.
Well, I
don't think so. Well, they might have, but I mean, you can bet your boots that they're great people, not just fluked it. You know.
Yeah. So he's definitely well deserved win. It's good to see someone of John's stature as an artist.
Yeah, I'm so happy he's cartooning again, because he was really missed by a lot of people, because no one was doing cartoons while he was out of the picture for a couple of years. No one was doing cartoons on his level, on you know, the forensic.
Well, the new era of editor probably doesn't.
No, that's
not
right.
Really interested in cartoons.
That's right.
But you know what? The new era of reader is not interested in newspapers. So we're kind of even. So you hire donkeys and
boy, you love putting a foot in when
you get apples.
You love putting a foot into newspapers, don't you?
It's not just the newspaper. I mean, the newspaper's lost its relevance, but the people that run the newspaper.
Those people. Oh, yeah, those people.
The people that run the newspaper have lost their relevance. So it's kind of well deserved that they end here and now, in many ways. You know, before they do any more damage. Getting rid of a cartoonist of his stature is an incredibly stupid thing to do. But you know, it's something that. Will go down
John
with
brings
the end
up
of the paper itself.
John brings up ugly truths. He brings up truths that people don't want to, you know, talk about.
Well, the thing that you just said before, that people look at the cartoon, they read the cartoon rather than reading the article.
Yeah.
This is part of the modern era. So that's why cartoonists will last longer than journalists, and definitely editors and publishers.
Well, I hate to say this, but I agree with you.
Yeah. So there's always a job for John, not so much for the people that have fired him. So bye-bye, Murdoch. Bye-bye, everybody.
Well,
Catch you later.
Murdoch's giving him a job at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, this is...
Well, I'm just saying Murdoch as a sort of an emblem of all publishers, really, not so much, because of the age of the...
well, this is Frantz Kantor.
Yeah.
John Spooner.
John Spooner.
And?
Jim Bridges. I'm not Jim Bridges.
Saying, we'll see you on the flip side, whatever the hell that means.
We'll catch you later. This is the John before.
Yes.
This is the John after.
Yes.
And I've given him a little bit of a haircut.
You have. Not much.
Awesome. All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.